Dave Stewart, hello.
Hello, hello, hello.
Welcome along to my playlist. It's really great to meet you.
Thank you.
You've got loads of exciting stuff coming up, and we'll get through all of that, but you've given me these 10 tracks.
Mm-hmm.
How did you kind of think about compiling these? Are they songs that...
I just closed my eyes and, imagined, zooming back in time and what I either I was listening to or something about the story around them made me listen to it more. So when I was very young, about 19, I got signed by Chris Blackwell to Island Music with a little band from Sunderland and to Elton John's Rocket Record label. And I had the amazing experience of, Elton would be in the record company offices and the piano, and there was a song blasting out all the time called Madman Across the Water, which is from Elton's album he'd been making. But he also would sit at the piano and say, "Hey Dave, what do you think of this? Daniel is traveling tonight on a plane. I can see the red tail." As a young kid, sort of listening to all this incredible songwriting happening. So that was a very influential period for me, and I could play any Elton John track. The track that I went on tour with my little band supporting him was called Don't Shoot Me, I'm Only the Piano Player, which had on it Daniel, and it had on it Rocket Man. So Rocket Man, that's a good one.
It's a great song to play.
Yeah, play that one then.
What was it like? Quick question about him. What was it like when you first met him and he was calling upon you and asking for, advice?
Well, he didn't ask me for any advice. I think he thought we were a bunch of scruffs from Sunderland, which we were. But he was very funny, and he's a very generous person. And I always say it's the record company. And when you walked in, it was in Wardour Street, just upstairs offices. It was like walking into a sort of boudoir or a kind of, a perfumery. And he was giving away free cologne to everybody, and it was wild. You come from up north, and suddenly you're in this world. And Elton was killing it. I mean, he had massive albums already. So then supporting them in a cycle stadium in Italy and places like that, being on stage because he wanted us to do the backing vocals on Rocket Man as well as be support act and all that. It was an amazing, a tiny little window into like what would be coming for Annie and I in Eurythmics of, being on a stage, 30,000 people, and being with somebody in a band, David Johnson on guitar, Nigel Olsson on drums, and Dee Murray on bass, watching a band, how they really were tight and followed Elton, like it was all about this voice and the song, which is something I learnt very early on about how to play with a singer and make sure that the song is like held up, That's why I'm doing this Eurythmics songbook. I mean, see, the songs become these really the flagship, the important sort of thing that lasts, long after we're gone. The songs are still there, and songs, they can trigger for people, memories that they go instantly back to. Oh yeah, I was at college and I just opened the door of my dorm and there was Sweet Dreams playing or whatever. And people come up to me and say, I was 10 years old and I was watching MTV and that video gave me the shock of my life when a cow came in. And, people of all ages, music is so influential on the mind and takes you instantly to places that maybe you hadn't been thinking about for a while.
It'd be nice to play, actually, if we may, Sweet Dreams. Just
Sure.
a couple of questions I've got for you about it.
Yeah.
People always come on and they request it, and they always say the same thing, that it's kind of retro and futuristic all at once. Did you realise when you made that song what an impact it was going to have?
Well, I realised when I was programming the drum and the sequences, and then Annie started playing a riff alongside. At that moment, I got sort of goosebumps, and realised this was very strangely unique. Now, when you're making something strangely unique, it can either be buried like 197 with an anchor, or it can be really successful and you don't know. I mean, I'm sure like an artist like Damien Hirst, putting a cow in formaldehyde, he's either going to get arrested or it's going to be put into...
it's going to hit the headlines.
It's going to be a massive art piece. It was a bit like that. And so that song obviously changed our lives. It became a huge hit all over the world, every country. I don't think there was any country where it wasn't a hit. And so when we landed in America to play as Eurythmics, it was already starting to go up the charts. By the time we finished our tour in San Francisco, it was number one. So it's Sweet Dreams, and whenever that comes on, I don't go to those places like, in stadiums playing it. I go straight back to the picture framing factory where we were in the eaves, trying to sort of like make a record with no money, and I go back to that time.
Amazing. Which song should we go for next?
Well, it's a funny thing, you see. When I was younger, and I was learning the guitar, it's a difficult chair to play in, but I was learning, like from blues records and things like that. Things, I was trying to learn stuff like that from old blues records. But then when I arrived in London, I was signed to Island Music. Chris Pratt was brilliant and signing lots of things that were very interesting, bands and artists that were kind of folk but not. And one of them that influenced my guitar playing a lot was John Martin. And he had a way of playing like... He kept this rhythm going, and it was not exactly folk music. I can't explain it. And he sang this song, which I was playing a little bit of the feeling of it, called Head and Heart. I think he plays it a lot faster. And he sang along whilst playing this strange kind of rhythm. And then he'd go and put on some delay pedals when I went to see him live. And it was the first time I'd seen that. And he'd play along with the delay pedals. And that was very interesting. So I'd like you to play that, Head and Heart by John Martin.
Amazing. Can I ask you a question? When did you realise, was there a certain age you realised, A, that you love music, and B, that you were really talented?
Well, I didn't realise I loved music at first. I just realised I'd discovered music, which was ridiculous because it was happening all around me on the radio and everything, but I wasn't listening because I just wanted to play football for Sunderland, and like loads of kids in Sunderland, and it was Sunderland till I die kind of thing. And I just played in 3 teams on a Saturday, and when that finished, I'd be under the street light with kids playing football. And my brother was into music, and he was getting some interesting records, but I never listened to them. Heard him and his mates listening, and he had the radio and all that, but honestly, I'm so nuts that if I get obsessed by something like photography or football, it's like I'm doing that.
Gotta do it, yeah.
I'm doing that intense kind of. I have to get better and better at it. So I would go on my own and practice taking penalties for like 4 hours with no goalie, so I have to go pick the ball up every time. So with music, what happened was, somebody broke my knee several places, couldn't play. And my cousin sent a record from Memphis. He'd managed to get there from Sunderland, which was like, we couldn't work out, but he was about 6 years older than me. I was about 14 at the time. And he sent this box, and in it looked like it was a magic box because it had a stamp from America, which I'd never seen before, and it had another stamp over it going Memphis. And I opened the box, and there was some Levi corduroy jeans, which we'd never seen either. We're like, wow, pair for me, pair for my brother. And then under it, he had 2 albums, and one was Robert Johnson, King of the Delta Blues Singers, and the other one was Mississippi John Hurt. Right, so those 2 records really influenced me, and Mississippi John Hurt particularly. Well, Robert Johnson blew my mind playing the blues, but Mississippi John Hurt, he had this gentle sort of sound and playing, and it was my introduction to finger picking, which is this kind of thing. Where both hands are doing things at the same time. And he'd sing funny songs like, I'm satisfied, tickled too, old enough to marry you, I'm satisfied. Gonna bring you back. I'm satisfied, tickled too, old enough to marry you, I'm satisfied. It's gonna bring you back. You know, so I had to learn then, you know, with your fingers and your thumb playing the bass line, fingers, finger picking.
You know, you make it look so easy, by the way. That's an absolute treat for me to watch you doing that.
And, yeah, well, so I'd sit, you know, with this broken kneecap with a guitar and try to figure out all sorts of things. And then I realised my brother had bought, you know, Rolling Stones records and Bob Dylan, and I was, Bob Dylan, what's he like? I'll put that on.
Yeah. And
then I was learning all these Bob Dylan songs like... Gypsy girl, the hands of Harlem cannot hold you to its heat. Your temperature is too hot for taming. Your flaming feet, they're burning up the street. I am lonely, come and take me to the beat of your rattling drums. Well, if you want to know, baby, about my fortune lying on these restless palms. So I had to learn all these songs like that on this whole album. So I learned the whole album of that. And then I would learn the whole album of something else. I was just stuck on my own. You know, my mother had separated from my dad. Dad was at work, my brother had gone to college. So I'm just sitting there with this 5-string, 1-string broken of my brother's guitar, which I took out of his wardrobe. And by the time my brother came back, he was shocked because I was like playing all this stuff. And I think my dad was confused. And then I rang up a radio station in Durham, Radio Durham, and I said, the woman answered, and I said, excuse me, I'm Dave Stewart from Sunderland, and I've written a song and I want to play it on the radio, because I didn't know how you did it, you know. So.
Yeah.
And she was about to say something, and I put the phone down and I played the song just like I was doing just now. And I picked it up. I said, "What do you think?" She says, "Hey, pet, I'm just the receptionist, but I'll tell them. And what's your telephone number?" And I gave it, and they rang back a week later. It was funny. It was the first time I ever got a check, and I couldn't believe it. I got paid for playing. I think I played 4 songs on Radio Durham, and a check came through, you know, for like £6 or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, you get paid for doing this. That's weird.
And that set the ball rolling, did it? That experience?
Not getting a check, just, well, I was already like obsessed with music.
Yeah.
Couldn't play football because of my leg. Now it was music, music. So devouring everything, going around people's houses, driving them mad, sitting in the back garden playing, standing on the wall of like a friend's house, and the mum's going, "Who's that on the wall?" And I'm like, and this friend of mine, Alan Hogg, he'd be, "Oh, that's little Davy Stewart," Then I'd be singing outside his shops, and they go, "Okay, you can busk outside here." This guy, Dave Donaghy, West 1, put a cap down, so I'm like outside there going, Oxford town, everybody's got their heads bowed down. And I'm singing all these Bob Dylan songs and stuff up in Sunderland, which, wasn't really that known, neither was a lot of the things I was playing. And then I would play some really early northern songs, which you wouldn't understand on the radio. I'll sing one verse, but nobody would get it.
Yeah.
Except if they were in Sunderland, well, there was Ma and Pa and Oberon gone, the last I lived next door, and she had to bring a lodger along, and he brought to carry a few more. There was Egg and Bert and Bella and Alf and all the bits of friends. Man, the cackle fleeing on the train was like 1,000 ends. Right, so it's a song called The Day We Went to the Coast.
Yeah.
And so I was learning those. So I was learning off these old guys who would sing with one finger in their ear in folk clubs, and I would beg them to let me in, but I was too young. It was like 14 or 15 years old. Now you can't come in, son. So I'd be standing outside playing these songs, and I'd go, "All right, you can come in for a little bit." And then I would learn from them. And then eventually I climbed in the back of a van while these guys were packing their gear, called Amazing Blondell, and I hid in their gear. And God, it was a terrible long journey. It went all the way back to Scunthorpe.
Oh wow!
I was in the dark, and
how uncomfortable was that?
The gear was rattling around. And of course, when the roadies, all bleary-eyed, opened the van door at about 6 a.m, there's this little kid stowaway in it, and they were like, "What the hell?" And they sort of told the guy in the band, John Gladwin, a lovely guy, "Well, this kid's in a van," and he's like, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Oh no, I just want to learn how to play in music and be on the road." And they were like, "You can sleep in the dog basket." And they had a Great Dane, and I had to sort of like have a blanket, and sort of like this dog was like really annoyed with me. And then about 4 hours later, they got up and said, "Right, we've got to ring your parents. What's your number?" So I gave them my dad's number. And the writer says, "Hey, your son's stored away in our van, and what should we do?" And I came on the phone. "Hi, Dad. Can I stay with these people for a bit? I want to learn about how to be playing, with equipment and on the road with a band." And my dad says, "Let me speak to the guy, whoever it was." And he says he wants to stay there for a bit and learn something. And they kind of looked at me and he went, "All right then." It was really sweet. So for about 2 weeks, they took me on gigs, and it was like really exciting. It was like being a stowaway. And I was in Scunthorpe, and they taught me a lot about how to play. And then I was learning from them. They were playing all Elizabethan music, which was really like. See, so I had to learn all of that stuff, which was kind of semi-classical, sort of, they call them pavans, gavots, like all these different kind of. And so I was just gathering information about music, every kind, and then I listened to the radio, and if the Small Faces came on with the Chiku Park, I'd learn that. Now that record, I loved that record. We should play that. It's a cool part. And I started getting into sort of psychedelic music. Then I knew I needed electric guitar. So my brother went mad because when he came home from college, he said, "Where's my guitar?" And so I sold it, or swapped it for this electric one in a second-hand shop. And he was like, "What?"
How did that go down?
No, well, when he heard me play it, he was like, "Blimey, okay." And then, I just wanted to play in places, but I couldn't. I was too young. So there was a relief teacher at the school I was meant to be going to occasionally, and he was called Brian Harrison, a lovely man, and he played the guitar, but he was young. He was like 22 or something, and he'd come in, and he'd played in folk clubs and places, and he was a really good guitar player, and he could sing harmonies. So we formed this duo called Stewart and Harrison, and weirdly enough, we got quite successful. Got on the telly and played around the Northeast, and then we decided to make an EP and make it ourselves. So it was like an indie back then, And so we went to this recording studio, a guy called Ken Mackenzie in Sunderland. It had egg boxes on the wall, and it was just a 2-track. You couldn't overdub anything. It was just one take, go.
Yeah.
And we made the EP, and another teacher at school, Dick Bradshaw, he was the only teacher I sort of related to. And I first noticed he had very brown sort of marks on his fingers from smoking fags, And every now and then I saw him in a break, and he was playing sort of bluesy jazz on a piano for himself. So he wrote a song for us as well. And we started selling these EPs at folk clubs, and people would buy them. So I was learning all about that as well, about how to be an indie band. But this was before indie bands. And then we joined forces with 2 other kids from Sunderland, and then we got signed, down in London with Elton John. And then I was let into a world of incredible music, because Island Music, Chris Blackwell, had a church. Now, he's been my mentor all my life, because I later on got a church, turned it into a studio.
Yeah.
Paul Epworth has it now, and so many people have recorded there. It's like the list is ridiculous. And
there's some incredible, but give me a couple of bits, some amazing people. Yeah?
Oh God, yeah, everything. Well, I recorded now with Mick Jagger, Paul McCartney. Oh God, well, Eurythmics, obviously.
Yeah.
And people like Patti Smith, Adele. I don't know. There's
it's amazing, isn't it?
Weird underground bands, and then Bob Dylan came in there with me. Bob Dylan and I didn't really record songs together. People keep thinking that. I had a question like, "Oh, how did Bob Dylan ask you to produce this album?" I said he never did. And I don't know what we were doing. He just would hang around, or we'd come around places and do stuff, film stuff with an 8mm cine camera, talk about stuff, play guitars together, and I never thought about making a record, and we've remained great friends. And but yeah, so that would bring us round to Bob Dylan's influence. I was playing a Bob Dylan song earlier, but when I heard Like a Rolling Stone, that blew my mind. And he'd gone electric, and people were complaining, "No, he should be acoustic folk club singer." But so we should play Like a Rolling Stone.
Brilliant.
So far we've played Elton John, Madman Across the Water. No, Rocket Man. John Martin, Head and Heart.
Sweet Dreams as well.
Sweet Dreams. Small Faces, Itchy Cooper.
Okay, great.
Bob Dylan, Like a Rolling Stones. Like a Rolling Stone. I said Stones because I'm about to talk about the Stones. So yeah, when I can't remember how old I was, but we could probably work it out by looking at the Googling it, when the Rolling Stones played in Hyde Park. Brian Jones had just died. Mick came on wearing this white. Hey, you're talking down me bloody mic.
I'm going to take that. Dave, I think it was 69.
Was it 1969?
69, yeah.
Okay, so I was 17 years old and hitchhiked down to London, got to Hyde Park, it was a massive scene. Couldn't see anything, so climbed up a tree. And Mick came on, all these butterflies came out, he read a poem. Brian Jones had just died. And then they launched into their live set. And that blew my mind. And then I got really into listening to all the Rolling Stones records and learnt so many of their songs. It's weird because I'm reading this list, and as I'm reading it, I'm realising these bands, yes, and then I met and, played and worked with all of them.
And how does that make you feel?
Old.
and special, hopefully?
Not really. I don't really feel special about it because it's a really hard thing, when it's your life and these things are happening. Like you're in Virgin Radio doing a radio show and you're sitting there, and do you think, oh, I'm really special now sitting here? No. You just think, oh, this is where I am and this is what's happening.
But when you have moments to look back on things, you just go, yeah, that's amazing. I did it all,
I don't know. Maybe I have flashes sometimes of moments, like I'm on stage with Bruce Springsteen and Bono in Miami Stadium, and we're doing, because the night was made for lovers, and I have flashes like, oh yeah, that was pretty amazing. Or Annie and I playing in front of the Reichstag against the Berlin Wall, and riots are breaking out, and there's a line in a song of ours, in the album 1984 Sex Crime, and it goes, we tear the bricks down one by one, and it was like chaos going on, police, dust flying up from the other side of the wall. I read in the newspaper after all these people were arrested, and they just wanted to get over the wall and hear the music and get out of East Berlin. So so that really I really remember those things very clearly. I remember sitting in Nelson Mandela's house with him and him talking about all sorts of things as a flash, but I don't go around going, I feel really special for sitting down with Nelson Mandela or
that's left for other people to to react, I suppose, to your stories.
It's just part of this weird journey.
But seriously, what a life.
Yeah, well, it doesn't seem to sort of stop till I peg out. Things keep happening. I'm one of those people that things turn up, and it could be somebody ringing the doorbell. I've never met them before in my life. I'm about to mention David Bowie, and I remember David Bowie with Iman turning up at my flat on 7 dials. That doorbell rang a lot. In fact, the guy who stood outside the Ivy that used to wear the bowler hat and let people into the restaurant, he'd often ring my doorbell and go, Mr. Stewart? I go, yeah. He goes, Helmut Newton for you here, sir. Or could be anybody.
Yeah.
Anyway, so David Bowie and a man came upstairs to the flat, and we were talking, and I was busy. I played him this song that was very sort of, where's the pick gone? It was very sort of Bowie-esque kind of influence, and he really liked it. And actually we could play that one. It's called Greetings from the Gutter, the song. It's one of my songs, and I was going like, that's what you gotta do when it's all over. That's what you gotta do. And he was singing along, and then he came to New York when I was recording it at the Jimi Hendrix studio. Hey, if you play that song, you'll hear the total influence in his voice. And then it was that I was pretty sort of taken aback at that. As I was making my own album, Lou Reed came down every day. He's playing guitar in it. Laurie Anderson's doing this sort of track like duet with me, kind of in this whispering strangeness called Kinky Sweetheart. And the band I was using was basically funkadelic, you know, Bootsy Collins on bass and Jerome Braley on on drums, yeah, and Bernie Worrell on keyboards. It's basically the same Bernie Worrell, you know, if you watch Stop Making Sense with Talking Heads. So I had all these amazing players. Mick Jagger came down, he's singing backing vocals along Sly Stone. This is on my own solo album, so that we can't play a lot of tracks, I know, but Greetings from the Gutter is great, but so is a song called Jealousy, which you can hear all those voices on it as well. So you can choose which one. And so, yeah, Bowie. And then not only did I get to know him, and he would play sometimes. One time he asked me to come to this place to lie on the floor, just me and him, and listen to a whole album he just made, just the two of us. And so I loved this song called Life on Mars. So on the Millennium, which is in Greenwich Mean Time, Annie and I played live, you know, at midnight, and we decided to play Life on Mars with an orchestra.
Oh, wow.
And that went out to billions of people live on 2000, you know, the strike of
the
midnight. Yeah. And so that was interesting.
What do you make of? Can I ask you a question? Because I never met him, but what do you make of Bowie? What did you get from him when you knew him?
Well, he had a quest and a thirst to create art and make it great, and in every sense of it, you know. So the look, feel, the sound. Actually, Nile Rodgers was telling me when he was working with David Bowie in about, I think, Let's Dance period, they were listening a lot to Eurythmics, and sort of, well, probably loads of people listening to them, just like he absorbed music and was listening to everything that was happening and what's going on. That's why he remains current, I think. And, you know, also like Eurythmics, you know, we didn't stick to a particular genre. So we would be electronic with a guitar, and then with an orchestra, and then it's R&B and soul and stacks and gospel. And Bowie was the same, you know. He'd go from, you know, on one album, you know, he would have all sorts of different stuff, and you'd think, oh, he's going this way, and then the next album is Young Americans, and it's all soul music, and so so.
And an interesting question to ask you is, you're about to go on this tour, doing Eurythmics songs. Do you have a favourite one that, or does it chop and change? Has it chopped and changed over the years?
Yeah, it chopped and changed. You know, there's a song that wasn't particularly a single, I don't think. It's called When Tomorrow Comes. But when we played it live, we used to sort of stand in a circle sometimes with just a few members of the band and play it acoustically. And the whole audience used to sing it. Well, the whole audience used to sing just about every one of our songs.
Yes.
But that became my favourite for a while. But then we used to end with, for 2 tours or 3 tours in a row, we'd end with that. You know that? Beautiful. The miracle of love will take away our pain. When the miracle of love comes your way again. So we used to end the whole set with that, and it would just build up and build up, and honestly, a lot of the audience would be crying.
I tell you what, I got goosebumps, and I can just picture thousands of people singing back to you.
They're singing it back,
amazing moment,
and crying at the same time. And we would end and then just leave the stage. This is like as our third encore, whatever, and leave the stage, and you could hear the crowd still singing it, you know, when you were in the dressing room.
Dave Stewart, it's so great to be hanging out with you. This is a really special one because I feel like I've got a personal, not just an interview with you, but you're performing as well for us. So thank you so much for coming in. And we must just talk about, we spoke a moment ago about the tour, songbook tour, but also the music that you've devised for this show as well, that you were chatting a while back to Chris Evans. Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, see, 3 years ago, Nile Rodgers asked me if I would end the Meltdown sort of festival that he was the curator, get together a load of people, artists, singers, and play Eurythmics songs, because, you know, he loved them. And so I thought about it, I thought, what should I call it? And so I called it Eurythmics Songbook, which it was, basically. And then I played at the Royal Festival Hall, and Niall played with me, and Emily Sunday got up to sing, Beverly Knight, loads of people. Then I had the London Community Gospel Choir, who I've worked with before, and a great band put together, you know, lots of female players flew over a Brazilian female harmonica player called Indiara Sofia, and Hannah Kopenberg on keyboards, who are also, you see, when I'm doing this tour, they're playing as well. Yeah. So I got together this amazing band, and an all-female band. They're all sort of like virtuoso players. And so when I did that 3 years ago, it was really, went down a storm, got great reviews. I thought, oh, I should take this on the road and do it. And then COVID happened, and so nobody could play. Then years went on and I forgot about the idea. And then last year, when we were inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and the Songwriters Hall of Fame, and Sweet Dreams was put in the Library of Congress, which was this huge honour, and put in the Grammy Hall of Fame, just went on and on. Yeah. And then I was thinking about it, and then this year came around, and it was like, hey, it's the 40th anniversary of Sweet Dreams. And I thought, I have to do something now or never, you know?
Yeah, it's the time, isn't it?
Yeah, so I said, I've got this Eurythmics songbook, and I'd created these amazing films on a huge, long LED screen while we're playing live. And I thought, I've already done all this work on it, so I'll just pull together all the players and let's go out on the road and play it. So I am playing at the London Palladium. I'm going to my hometown, Sunderland Empire, but I'm also playing in Paris and Berlin and all these different places. And I'm very excited about it because when I went into our albums, our catalogue, it's just mad. We wrote songs so quickly, and then I look at the titles and I go, oh yeah, God. And, there's literally like 25 hits or something like that.
It's incredible back catalogue, isn't it?
Yeah, as well as songs that the audience loved that weren't singles, they became really sort of like favourites live. And I'm very excited about it, and so is, I've got amazing, as I said, all female, brilliant musicians, saxophone, this girl called Yasmin Ogilvie, Julia Lamb on bass, Ellie East on drums, flying in India Sophia from Brazil on harmonica,
incredible.
Hannah Kopenberg on keyboard. I
can't wait to see this.
Yeah,
really special.
It's gonna look and sound amazing because I'm so obsessed with like the visual of things as well. So the film has certain colours in it, and the same colours that people are dressed in. So I don't know. I suppose a bit like David Byrne likes to sort of really, like, make something out of the song that elevates the song.
Yeah, the visualization.
Yeah, the whole thing.
And so, a couple of questions. Do you still speak to Annie? How's she doing?
Yeah, of course. She's doing great. She's been doing various charity, where she plays 2 or 3 songs on the piano, or she did a great thing with Vogue for charity where she did Sweet Dreams in this epic way, and I made the backing track for her to do it. And and she's been up in Scotland recently, and we had dinner in LA, and we were Yeah, I mean, we've been talking for 40 odd years since she was 21.
Yes.
So,
and can I quickly ask you? I mean,
Yeah.
I've heard this story so many times, but it was kind of a chance meeting you two, wasn't it?
yeah, there's a guy called Paul Jacobs. I was walking up the street in Crouch End, and this guy I knew from Camden Lock Market, he was in the window doing something, and he knocked on the window, hey Dave. It was about 6 o'clock, and he said, come in. I said, what are you doing? He said, oh, I'm opening a record shop, and I've got like the place upstairs as well. I said, wow, God, amazing, right in the centre of Crouch End. He goes, don't tell anybody, it's a squat. And he squatted in it as a record shop. And it became a famous record shop in Crouch End, Spanish Moon.
Uh-huh.
And well, anyway, he said, hey, the other night I saw this girl singing and playing on a keyboard or whatever. She was really great, and he knew I was mad about music. He said, you should hear her. And I said, well, where is she? He said, well, she works in this restaurant called Pippin's, a sort of vegan health food restaurant. He said, come on, let's drive up. He said, but he had this little bottle of Jack Daniels, and he said, let's have a couple of swigs of this, and then we'll go and see her, because we have to wait outside in the cold, right, and till she comes out. We could have went in and had something to eat, but the manager looked at us. I mean, he actually wouldn't let us in. And so I was blowing on the window, making it steam up and writing, I love you to Annie, but I didn't know who she was even.
Wow.
And when she came out, and she said, what are you doing? You nearly got me sacked. And we started talking, the two of us, and Paul wanted to go to this like sort of bar club kind of place, and we were there, and I said, do you like this? She said, not really. I said, no, do I? She said, well, let's go somewhere else. So we ended up back at her little tiny bedsit. I mean, half the size of this room.
Right.
But it had a big harmonium in it, and a bed and a sink and a kettle or something. And we stayed in that room 24 hours or something, and he was singing me a song on the harmonium. And then we decided to get a bus. We're on a double-decker bus to go to Crouch End, and Annie had a bit of anxiety, so I said, well, let's go and see my mum. So we did, and then what I mean is we just basically stayed together,
Yeah.
for years, moved into the squat above the record shop.
Do you remember, quick question for you, do you remember the first time you heard the voice, you heard her sing?
Well,
how you
yeah,
felt?
it was in that tiny little bedsit, and she had written a song. I think it was called Matt, I Got Your Letter. It was about somebody she knew who had passed away. He went to India, young guy, and got ill and died. And she sang this song on the harmonium, and it was very, very like a Joni Mitchell song. I can see why she loved Joni Mitchell and was obsessed with Joni Mitchell, and recently got to sing with Joni Mitchell. And and it was very sort of, but she was studying harpsichord and flute at the Royal Academy, and she was saying she didn't like it much because it was all these competitive people. And I said, well, I don't even know why you're doing that. You should pack that in and just, write songs and be an artist. And she said, okay, and she did. She never went back. And she is.
What do you think of her?
She is a brilliant artist.
What do you think of her solo career as well?
Well, it's interesting, because for me, completely different perspective to everybody else. So when she came out with Why, which was the first single, that was amazing, but obviously it's about us two.
Yes.
So then...
And how did that, I must ask you, what did you think when you first heard that?
No, that was beautiful, made me cry, And then I think it was Walking on Broken Glass, which you can interpret it any way you want, but the video was kind of almost a date exactly like my wedding. So there's a very sort of tumbled up kind of mixed emotion about me hearing the records compared to other people. And, you know, she did a cover album and a song that a boy that I sort of discovered and signed to my publishing company, David Freeman and Joe, they wrote, called No More I Love Yous, and Annie did that as a cover version. That became a huge success. And you know, I used to see Annie all the time in between us, and then she would come and stay at our place in the country with Anushka, who's my wife, been my wife for 26. We've been together about 26, 27 years.
Yeah, amazing.
And Kaya, who's going to sing with me on the tour, is amazing, sort of got a very emotional soul kind of voice. But the weird thing is, you know, Annie was there at her birth, and she's Annie's goddaughter, and she'll be sitting on Annie's knee singing There Must Be an Angel. I mean, she can sing anything standing on her head. She's one of those great singers. But so when I'm doing this tour, obviously there's all this history, and then there's my daughter standing next to me, who's 23, singing, and Annie loves her voice, you know.
Yeah.
And she's singing a song like When the Day Goes Down, and it's almost like deja vu, you know.
It must be wonderful. How do you feel when that's happening?
No, it's a great feeling, and it's, you know, the thing about Eurythmics music, it was always quite emotional because we'd lived together as a couple, decided after about 3 or 4 years to not be a couple but be a duo. Right? So try and work that out.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's nicely put.
I don't think there's any other act in the world that's done that. You know, I produced 2 Stevie Nicks albums and I'm great friends with her. Well, her and Lindsey Buckingham were a duo that joined a band and became hugely successful and then broke up. No, we were already a couple, broke up and then formed a duo and became hugely successful. So it's interesting standing on stage sometimes with Annie and we're looking at each other and we know the song is about, you know, things to do with us and other, I can't explain, like other situations of the world. And he's had a journal and, you know, so sometimes you just look at each other and you go, oh yeah, it's us. And oh, it's us and 80,000 people. But, you know, it's strange.
All the songs, whether they're happy or whatever, they are all dripping with emotion. That's why they're all so wonderful.
That's right. Yeah, they are. And, you know, the songs that I tend to be drawn towards and like are either dripping with emotion or they have this energy angst, like, you know, the Clash White Riot or the Beatles Revolution. Yeah. You say you want a revolution, well, you know. You know, it's got that John Lennon, you know, the way he played guitar, I liked, which is all you know, and just, you know, I like that kind of intense playing, and I also like loved it electronically. That's why when New Order brought out Blue Monday, I liked the fact that it was down and dark and strange and intense at the same time.
Can I ask you, when you first heard this record, Blue Monday, how did you feel? What did you think about it? What impact did it have on you?
Well, it had a very strong impact because of the feeling of it and because of what was being said in the song, and, you know, and the fact that, you know, Blue Monday, the 2 words together, even, you know, is very, like, the way Annie liked juxtaposition and we loved that yin and yang thing, you know, like sort of here's a great song. It's very up. It's called Right By Your Side. And everybody's, oh, really makes me feel great. But in the chorus it goes, but when depression starts to win, there's always like sneaked in this little, and what it means is I love songs that are like reality.
Yeah.
And not Disneyland, kind of, I like them when, it's all about the real stuff. And so, Talking Heads, same as it ever was. David Bowie, this is not my beautiful house and all that kind of thing. And it just very, I don't know, it's a way of describing it. It's a mixture of art, music, and emotion and intelligence. And this makes certain bands stand out to me.
And this was totally unique as well, wasn't it? And it was then and it is now.
Yeah. Well, that's it, and all the bands, sorry, I've gone away from the microphone. All the music and bands I'm talking about, it's timeless music. So if you played, Same As It Ever Was, or the Beatles' Revolution, or New Order, Blue Monday, none of them sound out of place. It's like you could say, Blue Monday, that drum machine, that sounds like this, that, but it doesn't really matter, because when it kicks in, it's just an overall feeling. It's like Kate Bush running up that hill.
This record, what do you think about its resurgence as well? That's the first question.
Yeah, well, I'm pleased, because a lot of people had not heard it, especially younger people, and suddenly it's in a TV show, a Netflix thing or whatever it is, that brings it back into people's consciousness. But it's a genius record. It's so brilliantly made in every way, and the words and the way, the tiny little bits of doom doom doom, and the kind of string sounds, and just everything about it. It's like perfection, isn't it? And
have you guys had your tracks used in, shows like Stranger Things? And do you get directors begging you, saying, please, please, please?
Yes. All the time. I get personal letters with, low budget movies, and I maybe know them. And I just did the other day, actually, for an Italian film. I wrote to the label and said, look, let them use it, because the whole film was about a guy who made these cassettes in a little village in Italy, because nobody could get these songs that they wanted. So he was making cassettes and giving them to people as presents.
Yeah.
I think it's called Tapes by Uri. And people wanted more and more, and they passed them around. And of course, record companies wouldn't like this, because it's duplicating. Yeah. In the end, he had massive rooms full of duplicating machines, and it became a huge business. And they actually, it's quite a funny story, because they actually made hundreds of millions, and then they got arrested for doing it. So they quickly buried all the money, the lira, and then they were in prison. When they came out, it changed to euros, and it was worthless. So
that'll teach them.
Well, no, so it's a great movie. I must mention U2, because I've been friends with them for years, and written such great songs, and One is such an amazing song, and I know the whole story behind it and why that came about. But I remember being on the road and hearing U2, Where the Streets Have No Name.
Yes.
And it was such an exciting sort of song, and also the video, and
that was the LA video, wasn't it?
Yeah, on the rooftop. I don't know if they were in LA or where they were, but also my son Sam, I remember he must have been about 11 or 12. Oasis came out with Wonderwall. We had a flat on 7 Dials in Covent Garden, and that was blasting out all the time. And it's funny, because then Liam, there's one time Kaya, my daughter, who's singing with us, my wife had to go get something from the shops, and Liam was the only person, I wasn't there, but he was babysitting Kaya, who was like 1.5. And she said she was a bit worried about it. When she came back, he was in the playpen with like her toys on his head, and she was laughing and like so. But very sweet.
That's amazing. Is that your favourite song by them, by the way?
Not necessarily, but I want to give it its due because, look, I was great friends with George Harrison, and he lived in my house for a year, and the whole Travelling Wilburys formed in my house in the back garden, and it's an interesting song, interesting story, but there's some moments when a songwriter and the band and the music, everything fall into this place.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what their influence was or how or what, it's just right. And that was one of them. And it, was introduced to me by my son, and who has a band called Low Moon, who are incredible and coming to play in England in a month's time. So, yeah, Nirvana, Nevermind. Again, when my son Sam formed a band when he was about 11 with his mates, and he used to practice in like the cow shed or the garage, and they were like nuts about this kind of music, and I can totally see why. And so I love visuals as well, and the video of that, and just the whole sound of the record, and the whole everything about
it.
Kurt
Started
Cobain.
a whole new kind of a
yeah.
new style, really.
Well,
didn't it?
kind of, yeah. But you see, I had a band signed to my independent label called Curve back, I can't remember when, but way before that, and they had already made this wall of sound in an amazing way, and yeah, I think they were really ahead of the time.
Yeah, amazing. So can I just thank you? Thanks for coming in. It's been amazing to meet you. An extra special treat, you playing on the guitar as well. Thank you so much. We're looking forward to seeing you on your tour.